Okay, so we've got her undercoated now. There's not a huge difference using a grey undercoat, but it's slightly darker than the original, the bare resin. So she's undercoated now, and what I'm going to do next is give her a light spray of white. This is going to be from the top of the miniature like that, looking straight down. It's going to be like that. And the reason for that is that that will help highlight all of the areas that need to be highlighted and all the areas that need to be shaded. What this will bring out is areas sort of in the creases within the material, or for example curves on the back of the hair like that, because this bit will be in shade, because it's actually behind or underneath sort of this section. Similarly for sort of bits under here, because it's under here, this would be in shade naturally. And areas like the top of her leg, the top of her arms, the top of her head, that's all going to be in highlight because it's on top. The style that you paint your miniatures in is entirely dependent on what you actually want to do. You can paint realistically, using a sort of sun effect, well, sort of pretending that there's a sun sort of highlighting everything. Sort of actually, if I move one of the lights over, so like that, so you can see sort of the highlights are sort of along the top of the leg where it's nice and bright, and then sort of under the bottom of the leg, the shin bone, is quite dark. And the reason for that is that the light is coming from directly from above. And similarly here, you've got highlights up here, but it's very, very dark under here. So you can aim for that kind of thing. You can aim for a sort of what I call a GW effect, which is everything has highlights on it. All the edge, there's a lot of edge highlighting in Games Workshop miniatures, so sort of all the edges, even on the underneath, they would all be highlighted, simply because that's the way Games Workshop do their miniatures. I prefer a more realistic way of painting with sort of top highlights, shadows underneath. Obviously if you've got a miniature that's sort of carrying a light, or maybe you want to fake another light source, maybe if you've got an urban scene, you could pretend they're standing next to a lamp or something like that, a street lamp, then you could always include another light source within it by simply, instead of actually showing the light source, by simply painting the light source on the miniature, and that's known as object source lighting. It's quite a complicated procedure and is quite difficult to actually get right. But for the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this using a technique known as Zenithal highlighting, which is where you highlight from the top of the miniature, so like that. All of these sections that you see here are all going to be highlighted to some extent, and sort of things underneath the miniature are probably going to be in shade. This mimics an outdoor scene with a sun coming from above the miniature. So what I'm going to do to highlight that is I'm going to get a spray can of white paint and basically spray from the top of her straight down, and that will help sort of bring out those. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute once she's sprayed. Okay, so here we are. I've sprayed her from the top. As you can see, it's quite white from that direction, not so white from that direction. So as you can see, what this does is it helps us pick out the areas that need to be highlighted. As I said, on the top of the legs, also in the back of this leg, top of the bow, not so much down here, and the same again, and also around the back, so there's not too much under here. There's quite a lot sort of on top of the bow, on the quiver there. Under the arm it's still quite dark, and yeah, you can see under there it's all still quite dark under there. So this gives us an idea of where the highlights and the shadows are going to go. This doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule. For example, on the face we've got a we've got deep in under there. It's going to be fairly in shadow under there, but quite highlighted sort of on top of the face on this side. So we can do some nice effects, sort of shadow to highlight on the face. Same on the arms as well, they're going to be highlight to shadow under there, and the same on the hair. We're going to be bringing it from a high highlight up here down to shadow in that deep recess. And even on the clothes, you've got a couple of little folds within the clothes. Obviously along the dress, you've got these huge, great big folds going down. And what I'm probably going to do is, although all of these in here have ended up with white on them, because they're actually folds, they will probably end up getting shadows in anyway, just sort of give some interest to the area. Otherwise that is just going to be a big blank area of space. And yes, it should all be sort of fairly highlighted, as you can see, but it's just going to end up as a really boring area on the miniature otherwise. Again, with the base, not much to say on that. It's all fairly flat in all honesty, but some shading under there, highlighting along the top of the branch there, highlighting along there and along there, and all the individual leaves and everything can get highlighted up. Again, just to bring some more interest into it. This area is going to be quite dark under here. Top of the legs is going to be quite bright. Under there it's going to be quite dark. So yeah, there we go. So that's the Zenithal highlight done, and it was literally just can of white spray paint, go from the top, work it around a bit maybe if you feel it necessary, and you can see it's left a bit of a spotty pattern here and there. I don't know if that's going to do a close up, but it's left a bit of a spotty pattern here and there, but with the translucency of the paint, once it's all painted up, you won't see that. It'll vanish quite quickly. So there we go. So next time I'll actually go through a bit of the colours I'm going to use and start blocking in the major colours.